Hello, this is John Boezeman again. Um, uh, this is a recording of the part about web programming that I did at the session earlier today. Some people reported that because there were so many hundreds of people in the e-meeting that they had trouble following along and keeping up with the screens and so forth. So decided to record this separate since this was an important topic for a lot of people and just on web programming and how to do script and modern web programming digital experience without writing portlets. Um, so quick jump into it. So this is section. This is going to be all about this and how to use Gulp and Grunt and how to use Angular and everything else with in your environment. One of the big things that we do with digital experience is around websites. Websites that bring in many different applications, whether traditional legacy kind of portlet applications, or from 168, newer 286, or even the new 362 portlet spec, which adds several more client-side features, or bring in content, bring in other SPA applications like Angular application, Ember applications, SPAs, bringing all that together to make a website with security, personalization, targeting, customization, and many other services brought together into one unit that brings in a website with a whole authoring experience around letting the line of business actually have input and functionality to customize the site without actually IT have to be involved in all those daily and individual updates. So instead of being like the old school where line of business had to create a ticket and request IT to go do something, they can actually go do things in a project with version and workflow and approval process that IT can sign off on after they've done assets like create a new page, add new content, rearrange the content on the page, and so forth on how they want it to show up on different devices. They can do all that without IT involvement, pick which applications IT shared with them, and then produce a website, all with the right services without IT having to be involved and go off and change code. That was the same, it has always been the same back in the traditional J2E. It's still the same in JavaScript. A lot of people get confused thinking JavaScript frameworks are a replacement for a website tool, whether us or one of our competitors. And there's so many features that to allow that. You don't want to go back to the old school where it's thrown over the wall and IT has to go do everything. Um, that's not the modern development, and that's also not giving the line of business the flexibility to do things on their own and move quickly and so forth. That's more of a justification for IT to keep their cost high. So one of the big things that we do, there's not only the traditional portlets, but we also add something around SPA and script applications. And so we have built-in support, so we let customers write whatever language they want, any framework they want, all without having to know anything about portlets. And my advice to you guys as you talk with customers is it's up to the customers to decide what kind of a development environment they want to use. Do they want to write traditional portlets, J2E, or do they want to go script applications using Angular or Ember, using Grunt and Bower as a package facility, using Grunt or Gulp as a build facility, using GitHub for source control. And so we don't care from a digital experience. We support all those. We actually have a whole bunch of assets that we delivered out in Node.js around linting, so you can actually lint and we call it SP lint that we provide back on GitHub to allow us to identify different aspects of SPAs that are changing global assets and flag those as part of the build step, so you know if that you want to be able to consume this SPA in a page with maybe one or more other SPAs and other kind of assets, that those things are changing global assets. And there's other things that it does. We go double check for like namespacing and other kind of features. Along with that, we have a whole bunch of Node.js tools that we provide out on GitHub for building, built-in support and sample gulp scripts and so forth, all provided out there. And I'll show you guys some of that. But my advice to you guys who work with customers, whatever have the customer, whatever they utilize and what their skill sets are, and that's which framework to use. Whether it's if you want to go JavaScript modern web kind of coding, or if you want to go traditional J2E coding, either one is great. We support both fully. in our environment, and it really boils down to the skill set. If a customer has mostly J2E skills, so they're no Java and JSPs, odds are the best platform for them to go forward is probably stay with traditional portlets, because the learning curve, Java developers make very bad JavaScript developers. Um, and then conversely, if their skill sets are more, JavaScript world, coming from schools or millennials, or they're just really good guys that have picked up the latest technologies, then I would strongly encourage going the script application route, going because it's much lighter weight. There's a lot of really good tools and the open forums around in Node.js. And I'll talk a little bit about our acquisition of Node.js' commercial strong loop, in a little bit, and how that plays into our digital experience and support for Node. So anyway, my advice is to customers is stick with what your skill sets are, unless you're changing the team dynamics and bringing in skills to do the right thing. Okay, so real quick, now we're going to jump into the actual part of that, and so script applications, we call it script portlets, but they're not really portlets. Have nothing to do with portlets, but other than we didn't want to confuse people with saying just SPAs, for example. So we group SPAs in something called what we call a script portlet, and basically it allows you to create your code in whatever development environment you want, whatever build facilities you want. If you want to use Puppet Chef for delivery, that's fine too, and push your changes back into our website. So you can basically create your assets, your SPAs, and then you push them back to our site, and then our site can aggregate those together with other SPAs, with other content, set permissions, and all that kind of stuff that we bring to the table for our website framework. And then there's a built-in push kind of model around that. Web developers love script applications. These single-page apps. There's so many frameworks, MVC frameworks out there. There's so many responsive frameworks out there. And templating frameworks and things of that nature. And all that, there's a large number of tools on Node, for example, that make life really easy, pulling dependencies, doing minimization, combining of resources, and so forth. Some really great assets, and really the web development space has really taken off in recent years. And we fully embrace that from Digital Experience. So you don't have to know anything about J2E, JSPs, tag libs, Eclipse. You never have to see Eclipse if you don't want to. You don't have to know anything about the portlet spec if you don't want to. All those things are fully supported with our support for script applications, which are first-class citizens in Digital Experience. And what's nice is you can develop mostly with your own. We even have Node.js simulated servers to simulate some of our extensions. So things like, for example, on script applications, we allow you to allow per user base, allow preferences, allow you to set public render parameters and state handlers and other kind of aspects that we extend out to the script applications. Things that existed in portlets are available through JavaScript aspects. And we even have a simulated Node.js server running that simulates those assets, so you can actually fully work outside without having to have a local portal server or anything like that local. Same with some of the Wickham tag support and simulation of Wickham tags. Since inside, one of the unique things about script applications in DX is not only can I take these SPAs, but in these SPAs I have access to any of the Wickham tags, so I can insert PZN rule tags, I can use targeting tags, I can use digital data connector tags to access backend systems of record. I can use user-based tags that I support. All those tagging frameworks are available. So imagine taking an SPA and plugging in plugins like in templating frameworks into those, like for example WordPress. Imagine putting a WordPress plugin inside your Angular application, for example. That's fully available to you with our script application support. Again, I already said this one, but basically no J2E support, no Java, no portlet stuff is needed. We also have something called Ajax proxy, allows us to access backend systems, so you don't have the cross-origin issue. in case the service is not a CORS enabled. So a lot of things are CORS enabled, but where they're not, and you need to access it, then you can use our AJAX proxy, which is both not just a simple proxy, but it also can pull up security and security tokens for that service. It can also, if you need to talk to SAML, or if you need to talk to BASIC or form-based, or some other certificate-based approach, it can pull out the appropriate certificates and put those in as part of the request when it actually talks to real service. All that's built into the framework. Um, the basis for how we make it easy to hook into tools is we have this thing called the SP push. This little facility, the little tool that you can deploy on your system, and it allows you command line to be able to push any script applications back into digital experience, back in the portal and Wickham. Because of its command line, you can hook it into any tools. Like, for example, for demoing quick demos, I show hooks into Sublime and Eclipse. So as I hit Control S and Sublime, it pushes the actual application changes back into the system. But really, the right way to do this is as part of the build step after minification, combining services go, whether you're using Grunt, whether you're using Gulp. After the build facilities and create your release assets of your SPA, at that point in time you call the command line push to push your assets back into the system. And I'll show you examples of doing exactly that. But the key thing is there's this push. You can call it as part of a Mantis script, part of a Gulp script, part of a Grunt script. You can call it as part of a Chef or Puppet kind of script. Urban code doesn't matter to us. You basically call up on the directory structure that you want to run, and we'll actually import that assets back into our system. And I'll show you examples of that. I'll just skip over this because we talk about you can hook into, because it's running outside and part of the build facilities. Not only can you do those build tools, but you can also run testing frameworks against your assets. Things like Mocha and Boezeman and so forth. All that's available to you to utilize. And Node.js has a huge community. There's over 145,000 packages the last time I checked. Both build tools, test tools, optimization tools, you name it. And you can take advantage of every single one of that ecosystem and really enhance it. And then, in our case, some of the things I'll be demoing is using hints, JS hints, and Uglify, and Less and Sass as preprocessors. You're going to be using Express, Grunt, and Gulp as some samples that I'm going to show you. And we even have a sample that we released out there on GitHub around Gulp, just to show you how to do Gulp and plugins in the Gulp script for doing all this. And it does many things like minification, combining service, and so forth. One last thing before dropping into the demos is one of the key things for script applications to work is you need to have the data services available to you. So you need to have, you can't from your browser directly call a JDBC call, for example. So you need those REST services available. So this also sometimes is a stopping point for if you need to go J2E like traditional portlets or go to script applications. If a customer has their assets already in a nice clean service model, this is really great. You can just directly consume those services. If not, you can use tools like our Bluemix services, Smart Cloud. You can use data power plants and cast iron to talk to backend services to generate RESTful services around it. And of course, our products like our Experience Factory connectors and things of that nature. One of the new ones I'd like to point out is IBM just recently bought StrongLoop. So we've been using StrongLoop with Digital Experience for quite some time. In particular, they have their visual API constructor called Arc that allows you to generate your RESTful services to be consumed back in our script applications inside of Digital Experience. So it's a great marriage of using the Arc and the loopback framework to talk back to these backend systems. They have connectors to things like MongoDB and other services, SharePoint even, and other backend services, and allow you to turn those into RESTful services. What's real nice with in IBM StrongLoop is the analytics and hook points for tracking all the way through the flow and the other assets around the app API usage. The other kind of interesting thing that StrongLoop provides is a hook point for auto-generating your Angular models based off of your Arc services. So it allows you to basically do pseudo-generation of your Angular models, which is a great way to grab those models and now use them in your script applications, talking to those REST services that you're using StrongLoop to generate. So it's a great combination. What I don't encourage is people to fall back into the old legacy model. One of the last chart, and the rest is all demos, is about don't fall into the bundle everything together problem. So in traditional portlets and servlet model, one bad thing about that is everything's available to you. You can call JDBC calls, you can call web service calls, you can call EJB calls, and guess what? Lots of customers do that, and they should. They should be really going through a service tier, an aggregation service tier, so that your view logic is separate from your aggregation kind of services, separate from your back-end low-level services. You shouldn't munge all those together into one application or one service. UI tiers change much more frequently than business logic, which change more frequently than back-end low-level kicks transactions services that don't change very often. And so bundling all those together, so single scale, single delivery, single test, is a bad move. And a lot of customers fall into that. It's so easy to call a JDBC call from a servlet or a portlet. And what's really nice about script applications and these SPAs inside DX is it really forces you to have a service. You can't munge these together. What I find people do with Node.js is, especially with Express, they'll use the Express plugin and create their own service. They put the UI logic, they put their service logic, their Angular UI web tier, plus their backend service logic that's talking through a connector, all inside the same Node.js application. And guess what? Now you have this Uber app. As line of business wants to change these UIs much more frequently, you have to open that up, retest it, the whole thing, and re-deliver the whole thing. And so separating your view from your view logic from your business logic and from your back-end data logic is a very important thing. So it's one of the things I stress to customers is get yourself into a clean separation. Don't bundle your views. I don't care where the views are running. I don't care where the backend services are running, but make sure you don't bundle those together. I'm finding too many customers that that are using Node.js. They're going back into the same bad things that they did in servlet world. They're reproducing in Node.js, and Node.js is such a clean and nice environment, and we don't want to. It's not good to start messing that up with some of these bad behaviors. So let me jump into some demos here. So the first thing I always like to show you is a very simple case that I'm going to show is and for this I grabbed out of GitHub just one of the test ones. So like here's a whole bunch of Angular investments, Angular contacts, Angular PhoneCat, Backbone. These are just sample projects in GitHub that people use for testing, and I can open these things up in my browser. So I can open up this application. It's got I got a little text comment there that says some other modifications. I can drill into different products, images, and so forth. Nice little SPA application as like a catalog feature for browsing phones. I can work on that and develop that at my own pace outside of Portal and Wickham and Digital Experience. So imagine me writing this, testing it. I can use my favorite editor. And in this case, I'm just using Text Wrangler. And so I can edit those applications. I think I have it up here somewhere. Here's my some other modification. And I can do something else, another modification, I'll just say, right? If I hit refresh in the browser, I get my change. All that's great. So I don't have to know anything about digital experience. All I have to do is know one thing, and to turn this SPA into a script application running inside a digital experience, along with other content and everything else. And that is, I need to go create a single artifact. Where's my file here? Not that one. Where's my other window? So back to my window here. The only thing I need to do to turn this entire Angular PhoneCat application to a script application that Digital Experience understands is add a single spconfig.json file. Now, I'll open that up so you can see what it is. So let me open that up in Text Wrangler here. All it is a couple lines. So I installed that our SP tool, that a little plugin that we install on your system. And once you have that, you can push any of your applications to Digital Experience, to Portal and Wickham. But and there's a default SP config that I can specify host name, port, user ID, password, and default locations and things of that nature. So on the command, you can pass in all the command line parameters. You can also have a default. Since I always work with this one server, I point to the same server. I don't want to have to type user ID and password and the server information each time as part of the command. And this way, add each individual application I want to go work with, I only override the parts that I care about the overriding. And so, since I'm working with this server, you can also specify if it's a live production version of the asset that you're modifying, or individual projects. In Digital Experience, we have these projects with versions and so forth, and I can update individual project versions if I want to, or I can update the published version if I want to. In this demo, instead of bringing in projects and version control and all the other kind of stuff, and then I'm not going to use that. I'm just going to update the published version for this case. But in real production cases, you're going to be updating your project version so people could test it, preview it, and make sure it's all good before you submit your project for approval and as part of the workflow process. So all I had to do is create this one JSON file. It's, total of 4 lines, counting the squigglies. And basically what I need to do is that one's called this WCM site area. So when we update these script applications, they're all HTML, JavaScript, CSS, JSON files, and artifacts of that nature. That's just content. We're just treat that as content in our web content management solution. So we just upload those as content. And so what I need to do is tell the system where to actually store those artifacts. So when I update and install this Angular PhoneCat application, I got to tell the system where do I want to install it. So that's basically what I'm doing here with the WM site area. It's got the name of the library that's going to hold all this code and logic, and then the rest of it's my path into the library. So what's my directory path in there that I want to upload this application? So, in this case, my library, I have many different applications installed uploaded under the libraries and frameworks. So I'm putting under libraries and frameworks, and the second line says, what is the palette? On the palette, what do you want it to be called? So line of business or other IT guys know what the heck it is. So what do you want to call it? You can also do things like icon, and there's lots of other kind of facilities, metadata associated with there. But to keep it simple for this video recording, those are the only 2 lines I'm going to update. So basically, I'm going to create a John Angular phone catalog application that people can now add to their pages, and it's going to come out of this location, out of the Script Portlet library, script applications, and then library and framework subdirectory. So all I did is create that simple little dumb little JSON file, and that's it. So once I have that JSON file, I'm in this. So like for example, if you see I'm in that directory, all it has is that JSON file. All I have to do is call sp push. Oops. Let me do it the Linux way. And all it's doing now is grabbing all the assets, building all the assets, encrypting the assets, updating the assets back to the system. Now if I bring me back to my system here, if you notice it's completed. So command was successful. So now I should be able to, I'm on my system. Let me see if I've timed out because I've talked too much. Nope, good. So I can now go add those to a page. So I could be a line of business person, I could be a development person, doesn't matter who I am, but now I have those assets. So I created under Script Portlet Applications was my where I created the asset. So I'm going to drill into there, and then I did frameworks, libraries, and frameworks. There's my libraries and frameworks, and there's that John Angular phone app. And here's other applications that I've uploaded into that location. So I'll just go add John Angler phone catalog to my page. And I could WYSIWYG drag drop it, hit the plus, doesn't matter um, in my case. So there's my application. It's exactly like it was working in the browser. I can drill into the products, all the images. So my Angular application that the developer didn't have to know anything about Portal or Wickham or portlets, and just by calling sp push against it, they're uploading it. Now I can put other web content on the same page, put other SPAs on the same page, and so forth. And now, if I wanted to do other things, like for example, I can actually augment it with customizations, preferences, personalization rules. If I want to, I just go back into the my content over here and modify it. Say I wanted to add something, another text update. Kind of stupid. Hit Control S. Now I can go over here. I could tie the push as part of Control S. I did that for Sublime. So when I demo with Sublime, I have it tied to my Control S. When I save, it automatically pushes it. Now, as soon as it finishes pushing, should only take a few seconds here over my network. I go over here and hit refresh, and you should see that code change, another text up. No WAR files, no portlets. You didn't need to know anything about the system. You just have to call push whenever you want to update and add to the palette. And so, again, I'm updating the live version, so the up version that everyone sees. But I could update individual instances, and I can update individual versions inside of the public, like a project. But to keep it simple on the parameters, not specifying a project name or not specifying an instance ID that I want to update, I'm just updating in general. So that's a very simple case where I take an Angular application that I just got off of GitHub that I've developed, and I can tweak it all I want. I can hit Control S, and then all I have to do is call push whenever I want to update that Angular application. So but that's great for like a dev kind of environment and so forth. But in a more production kind of model, you want to do a lot more. I want to do things like preprocessors, combining the the JavaScript and compressing the JavaScript, combining the CSSs and compressing the CSSs, looking for any facilities and so forth. So I need more of a build process. So another demo I thought it would be worthwhile to show you is a couple gulp demos. So like for example, I have this Angular context. So let me bring that directory here. So I have this Angular contents directory. It's got a whole bunch of node modules and so forth. We're using Uglify, Minify, and Less, and all kinds of other aspects. I'm using Bower for dependency mapping and loading, and things of that nature. There's also a great article that Warren created step by step for this, and you can actually download the assets from the GitHub and OpenNTF, the sample build gulp script and so forth, and even the sample assets. There's a couple of different assets in here, both around the contacts and using linting and other test tools against it. So in my case, I have this nice little context, Angular-based context that I want to go do, and I'm going to use gulp, and it's going to minify everything, copy everything. It actually moves everything into the release folder and so forth. And then also, because I also have this little sp config, I'll open that one up so you can see what it says. All I did was take that project that's already there. Let me get it back to text wrangler here. And basically the same thing. I'm giving it what my content. Since I didn't give it a folder, it's going into the root location of the root library, and then the main kicker for it. So this is going to be my name, so it's going to go into the default library. Here's going to be the name on the palette, and I can even specify what the starter HTML of that SPA is. So that's basically it. I added the JSON file to that project, and then inside the Gulp.js file, let me go ahead and open that so you can see what that looks like a little bit. It's really simple. Gulp is quite powerful. 80 lines including comments. But the key magic is this one gulp task, which is basically calling our push command against the release directory, where after it's done the minification, combining, and so forth services. So let's go see how it works. So I'll go over here to my directory. I'll run gulp on that directory. So it takes a few seconds. It's going through, finds out any changes, it builds everything, compiles all the assets, and then it actually is going to push it, as you see the command successful. It pushed it to the system. So now I should have a command on my palette. So let me go back over to my palette, and under the defaults library, since I didn't specify a library, there should be, let me go all the way out to the library, and here's my JavaScript splint sample in that directory. So let me go ahead and add it to the page. Since my gulp tool built everything, combined it, compressed it, and published it into our DX. And so now you'll see this, the Angular context with all the context and so forth. And I can drill down into it and all the other kind of assets if I want to, and drill into Charlie and so forth. I can, and you see my little hello world too. So one of the nice things about Gulp is, and it's got the watcher, I'm using watching services. So I can go here and edit one of those files. So I think I have, what do I call it? So I have one of those files uploaded here. So hello world too. So if you notice, it's from that same directory, the Angular context splint directory index.html. So I'm not modifying the production version. I'm modifying the pre-built, the non-release version of these assets. So I can go here and say hello recording for everyone, and hit Control S, save. If you notice, the watcher automatically detected that there was a change. It's automatically doing the whole build step. It automatically compressed all the JavaScript, combined all the CSS, using those built-in Node.js plugins and build facilities, automatically published it out. Now if I hit refresh over here in the browser, you should see the updated version of the application, all built and combined, and hello recording for everyone, right? And so it's a great way to work. I could have worked outside of it, but because I have the preprocessor feature, I can push those changes after a build is done and actually push those changes. So that's a real simple example of using Gulp to combine and compress and all the latest tools. It uses Bower for build, for pulling in build facilities. So just a couple quick examples I want to give to everyone on how you can do all this with the latest technologies, using the latest features. Along with that, I mean, we have, you know, for IBMers, you can go to this demo server. We have over 100 different Ember and Angular-based samples to no end that you want to. So, like for example, I can go here and look at Angular contacts or investments. It shows the whole investments kind of aspects and drill down investments. You can use knockout mail, you can backbone, bootstrap directory samples. There's lots and lots of them. I put in view mode so it's a little prettier. You know, I can try it all out. I can drill into it, and so forth. So, you know, I can also, there's tons more other frameworks and samples. You know, backbone to-do list. I think the one that's kind of nice is the wine cellar. There's this Ember wine cellar kind of aspect that I can start browsing wine. So this might be a good way to close up on the samples, but we have over 100 different samples. We haven't found a single. If you want to go React or React samples and so forth, we haven't found any libraries or frameworks that we can't consume this way, whether it's React, whether it's Extension.js, Ember, Backbone. We don't care. It all works. But what's also nice is once it's working, all these scripts are in there, not only can I talk to services, but I can consume any of these Wickham tags. Every Wickham tag is available to me to consume in that script application. So I can get these just by putting a tag inside that script application. Or I can do things like launching scripts. So I can have scripts launch other scripts. I can also have it using JSP components, other kind of things. So if I want that client-side JavaScript application, also called J2E artifacts, maybe a JSP, I can even call JSP components. Or I can do a store with preferences. So this is built into the JavaScript. So let me go into edit mode here, for example. And now all of a sudden in edit mode I get settings. I can go and add different fields that I want to display, and now that's stored as a preference. So that's available to me in my script applications. And I also can affect traditional portlets. So I can set public render parameters, for example, that affect over here these render parameters. So I can have both receive and publish public render parameters to affect traditional portlets, plus client-side eventing and so forth. So all those features are available to me. Also really nice hookups into Bluemix services, like using MongoDB as a data service out on Bluemix, using business rules out on Bluemix and Decision Server, Watson services. Nothing stops you. So the beauty of script applications is as long as I can invoke it, I can go and access it. So as long as I have authorization to invoke that service, almost nothing's available to me. So we open this aperture up to develop customers to use and whatever they want to. All right, so that's kind of what I showed. There's lots more samples and demos, but it's not not necessarily anything special. I can keep clicking on more samples and so forth, but it really is not that that interesting. Just the whole idea is I can consume any of these script applications. Or I could do things like, for example, in my Sublime editor, for example, I have my Sublime so that when I hit Control S, it automatically publishes and so forth. But a much better way is this kind of a model. The other thing related to this, so not only applications, but our whole branding. So in digital experience, themes is also based off HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and we have a Node.js plugins for what we call DX Sync that we released out on GitHub. And people can fork if they want to. That allows us to do built-in offline sync with file watchers and so forth. So you can edit your branding kind of artifacts and automatically push your branding artifacts there. And then we have a new tool that plugs it in for the templating frameworks of Wickham, or Web Content Management, for authoring templates, presentation templates. I'm about to release a Node.js plugin for that, so it automatically does synchronization, ties into Gulp and Grunt for build facilities if you want to build any of those artifacts, and then push them back into the system. I hope this was interesting to everyone, how we're truly embracing the client side and modern web development, along with still not giving up on the traditional J2E development. Both are available, both fully supported, both perform. It's really up to customers to decide which model and approach they want to go. And with that, thanks so much. I'm going to stop the recording.